Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to mention is what I use to work with my clay. So once I take it out, I put it directly on a piece of parchment paper. This I find is the best surface to roll out your clay on. For me particularly, I haven't found anything. You could probably use like a pane of glass or just like a nice smooth countertop. I don't really have access to that here. Our countertop in this rental is kind of bumpy, and so it wouldn't really work. And so I got parchment paper to put on the table just because I was finding that it was sticking to the table. So I haven't found another solution, but parchment paper was a great start. I will say that as you roll it out, it'll absorb some of the moisture from the clay, and sometimes it can crease pretty easily. And so when you're rolling it out, you can get lines through your clay. My recommendation would be to smooth those out as much as possible. After my pieces have dried or finished in the oven, I usually sand them down, and it's quite difficult to get as down to the inside of those grooves to even them out. So my recommendation would just be to be careful with that, and then just make sure they're easy to smooth out. Just make sure you do that before you leave them to dry or put them in the oven to bake. One of the first pieces or tools that I got to do this work was these silicone ones. I just ordered these, I think, on Amazon. I don't know the brand, but I can find that out and create a list for you guys. It came in a set of 3, and the other one is around here somewhere, probably covered in resin at the moment. But they work really well. They get edges very smooth. You can use them to make indents. I've made some garden markers for my mom, and I used this edge to make the lines on the carrot. It worked beautifully. Really big fan of these. Would highly recommend getting a set of them, and they all have different ends, which is great. And so the other one I have has completely different ends as well. When I started with rolling out my clay, I put it on parchment paper. I used a rolling pin. I did notice that it was quite difficult to get it even, actually. And so I didn't have, a lot of people use 2 wooden slates on the side, and then you'll put your clay in the middle, and then you'll use your rolling pin to roll over both. And then once you get it as low as the sticks on the side, then it's all even, right? You'll go across the whole thing and it'll be nice and even, which is great. If you do not have something that you can use for that, I used large popsicle sticks. And so I made 2 different thicknesses. I did one with 5 and then one with 3. Oh, sorry, that one has 4. This one has 3. So I did 3 different widths. And I just put these on either side, and then I just move them as I roll the piece out. I have been working on small charms, so I don't need a lot of surface area, so they have mostly just stayed the same place, and it works perfect. There's no need to go get, I had these laying around the house because I have a bunch of craft supplies kicking around from other projects years ago, and finally put them to use. So they were great for that. I've also used just the individual sticks to help smooth out larger areas of the clay, and that works great as well. One of the other things that I purchased was these wooden pieces. I will say I've used this end a few times. These do work great. They're not as effective, I'd say, as the silicone ones. So I certainly use these less, but I do like this long sloped to a point piece. I use this one quite a bit. It just works really well with the end from the silicone piece. It can finish off larger sections nicely. And then I usually use this to push in on certain sections. It's got a bit of a wider base, which is nice. But I don't use these super often. I have found that when I use them with colored clay, that the color sticks on it. So if I do take it to a piece of white clay after, sometimes it does transfer. So not a huge fan. I mean, they're great because they come in different shapes than the silicone pieces, but I still might be worth it. I'll put them in a shop for you guys to check out, but not my favorite pieces. And then the other ones that I really liked, I got, I believe, off Amazon as well. They come in a variety of sizes. I don't really need all of these sizes yet, but I noticed that a lot of people use them for like small details on adding small eyes if you're adding faces to things. and they're just different size rounded ends on each of them, and so they're each double-sided, and they come in a variety of different sizes, which is really nice. So you can use them for a lot. And then one of them has a more long flat end, this one, so it's less rounded and more pointed. This has been super helpful. This came in a set of 5. Actually, these might have been from Michael's. They came in a set of 5, and they have been really great. I love them. They work super well. And then I believe those also came with this one, and so, or maybe this one came with these wooden ones. This has been helpful. I haven't used it too much, but this piece at the end is great because it's got some corners on it. It would almost be great if there was another one that just had a long, one of these is long, that came to a point. But I use these corners for a lot. This is great for getting under clay. So if you're maybe like carving letters into a slab, you can scoop out the inside of the letters quite easily with a tool like this. And then this is just for a wider end. Works great. Really handy, this tool, for sure. And then I don't know if I have one in here at the moment, but an X-Acto knife, huge help. I have seen people in videos use more long pointed knives. I'm going to be looking for one of those because it looks like it works beautifully. Just make sure it's sharp, clear it off after a swipe. I noticed some of my clay will stick to it. So I just clear that off to make it super clean cut every time. And then the gesso that I showed earlier, or in the other video, oh, I have it right here. I just use this golden gesso, or Liquitex is a great brand as well. I'm sure other brands make them, but I use this once my clay piece is dry. I use this to coat them before I paint them. And then I am just currently using a resin, this resin right now, and I pour it into a container. It would be great if you could get a silicone container, because then it's easy once that, if you know there's some residue left over, like I'm using a glass one right now, and I found I couldn't really get all of it out, so it's kind of just built up, and I'm just gonna have to garbage this thing after. I'm not gonna be able to keep it. It will last for a while, and I'll find a way of disposing it, but yeah, it's just a silicone one. If you have some residue from if some of the resin has remained in the cup after you've cleaned it out and poured the rest of it back into the container, it will dry in the silicone, and it should just be able, you should be able to just peel it out of there. The same with the tools. Once it dries on the tools or gets, you know, silicone's just very easy to clean. So I would recommend, if you can find a container to pour the resin in for any clay pieces you're making, certainly that would be my recommendation. Some of the other pieces that I use that would be very helpful to look at, let me just see if I have them here. I just got this set of different size, I have a couple different sizes of square, they're basically like cookie cutters but for clay, and then some circle ones, and I have, I think, 3 or 4 sizes of each of them. And these have been lifesavers to get, especially when you're making charms of the same, multiple of the same piece of charm. You want them all to have the same consistent size, and so these have been a lifesaver. Alternatively, if I have another shape that I'm cutting out, I will just cut it out of paper, and then I'll keep that paper cut out, and I'll just place that all over the clay and do those cutouts. And then what I usually use to sand them down to smooth them out after they're done drying or baking is just a light sandpaper. So this one is 150. This works great. This is a 221. I mean, you can feel a little bit of difference, but not a lot. This one is more than great. This comes with like 5 or 6 sheets. And I got this months ago, and there's still a couple sheets in here, and I have a couple that I'm working with right now that aren't even finished yet. Making sure I got everything in here to show you guys. Yeah, I think that is mostly, I will talk a little bit about the resin process that I do. So when working with resin, you should always be wearing a mask, a filtering mask. Mine is a 3M one. I got this at Canadian Tire. Super easy to put on. It just has this top head part which slips on. just like that. And then at the bottom, there's these straps, and those just go around the back of your head. It's really important to wear one of these. The resin is not good for us to be breathing in, and you should always be wearing a filter when you're working with it. I also highly recommend purchasing gloves. I use latex-free. Oh, sorry, let me just grab the box here. These are the gloves that I buy. I also get these at Canadian Tire. They are just nitrile. Yeah, black nitrile exam gloves. Medium size, they fit great. They're super easy to put on. They just keep your hands clean. They're great. I would highly recommend getting those. I did also buy safety goggles. You can put those on as well. I don't always wear them, I will say. And then I just use a normal paintbrush to dip it in the resin and then paint it on the piece. When you're working with the resin, it will get really clumpy on your brush if you leave it in the sun. So you don't want it to have any sunshine coming on anything with resin. If you do dry, you can technically dry the resin in the sunlight, but it does have a chance of turning a little bit yellow. So I would recommend purchasing a UV lamp. You can get them on Amazon. They're super cheap. Mine is by Fun Showcase. It's not a great one. I need to get another one. And then when you're done doing that, you don't have to clean your brushes right away. They will not dry out just wrapped up and tucked away. So I usually wrap mine, like this is just wrapped in a piece of parchment paper, and I just keep it out of the sun to the side. You can leave it like that. Sometimes I'll put it in a bag to keep it there. If you notice over a couple days it starts to get a little clumpy, the best way to clean it out is to use rubbing alcohol. Clean the brush completely, and then put it in some soapy water after. The bristles should come back within like a day. Mine I've always recovered perfectly fine. It does take quite a bit of like rubbing the paintbrush in the rubbing alcohol to get all that resin out, so just be patient with it. But yeah, that's how you save your brushes from the resin once you're done. And I would recommend when you're working with resin, I usually just bake it for quite a long time. You want to make sure that it's not sticky or tacky. So I will leave mine in each probably for like 10 minutes aside, just to make sure that it's completely dried and hardened and it's not going to stick to anything. I usually do one side at a time, and I'll do the edges around the piece a couple times as well. I will do another video to talk about the tools that I use for my charms if you guys are interested. I have a couple of different things that I've tried, and I've noticed I've learned some techniques along the way that have really helped. So I can do a video sharing that, and then the process of actually making a charm. But those are the tools that I find the most helpful. Hopefully you find them helpful as well if you want to give working with polymer clay a try. But yeah.